Good evening and welcome to tonight's show from DJNTV, Disc Jockey News TV. Tonight's show is brought to you by Electra Voice, DJ Event Planner, DJ Trivia, Odyssey Innovative Designs and Cases, NLFX Professional, Promo Only, and the DJNTV Insiders. Good evening and welcome to tonight's show here on DJNTV. I'm John Young with the Disc Jockey News, and tonight my guest, which you can't see, is Brian Gross. Brian, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing well, doing very, very well. Tonight, gang, we are going to be talking about what a publicist can do for our businesses as mobile entertainers, wedding DJs primarily. There's a lot of things that we don't do very well, and Brian, I think, is the guy that you guys are going to kind of listen to when it comes to some of this stuff. So, Brian, kind of start us off and give us a little kind of a background of what got you to this point, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, so when I was actually in high school, I went through my CD collection, which now dates myself, and wound up making calls to record labels and getting an internship at a label. And I would go in 3 days a week, and then went to college for a bit, came back, worked on Lollapalooza, and just sort of worked my way up the entertainment ladder in the music industry in publicity. So I was working with the publicity department and helping out with press kits, and then got to a place where I was pitching bands and then working on full campaigns with bands and the like. So I did that in the 90s, and then went to another industry for a minute, and went on my own in early 2001. And I've worked with all different types of talent and people and brands and companies as far as doing media and public relations.
So when you're talking about media now, are you talking more of a print media? Are you doing things on the digital side? What has your experience been with that?
Well, it's certainly gone from print to digital. I remember back in the late 90s, I was the one sending albums to the Pitchforks of the world and these, internet-based sort of online zines that were telling me we're going to be something one day, believe in us. And I did, but a lot of people were like, this isn't going to happen. The magazine's going to be fine. So sure enough, as time has gone on, I still do stuff with print. I mean, print is still important to a certain extent, but certainly a lot of what I do is online based, and there's so much editorial content out there and need for content from editorial places across the board. So the definite focus over the last couple decades, frankly, has been online.
So what's a day look like? And this is going to just kind of maybe going off at a little different angle. But what's a day in your life like when it comes to someone who is trying to help your clients find more ears, eyes, what have you?
Well, sure enough, the first thing when you get up in the morning, you're like, you kind of cringe as you go to the email, praying there's there weren't any fires overnight. So you kind of start with that. And I'm very much a zero inbox guy. So I go through, and unless I have something major important or something on deadline, I like to get through the overnight emails. And then I go through and, I do a lot of the press release sending, which, the media releases and whatnot on my clients, get those out first thing in the morning. And then it's just a constant barrage of email back and forth, sometimes on the phone, but it's so much, everything is so online, and you're dealing with people online, and you're dealing with people in all sorts of, look, you and I are talking in this format, and I've talked to people over Skype all over the world, and you talk to people through Facebook Messenger and through Snap and through Twitter. And so there are just so many different ways to communicate with people, and people want to be communicated in their way. So I'm very much the one who adjusts. And it's pitching articles. It's looking for opportunities. I have writers that hit me up and want to do stuff, TV producers from domestic and around the world. Obviously, radio is still incredibly important. So you have all these different facets of media. I sort of break it down into four. It's, online, print, radio, and television. And obviously the lines are blurred in many of those. But when you're in my position, you have to be aggressive. You're on your toes. Clients call you, they have an emergency. You're sort of you babysit 24/7. You're on call.
Sure.
Something always happens. So you just have to be very immune and be very flexible to that. And that's one of the most, I think, important traits in a publicist is, hey, you're being thrown something, figure it out now, and you have to do that.
So you use the phrase being thrown something, and I've actually got a couple of notes here I wanted to come back to, and we'll get to those. They're throwing you something. So give us an example of what kind of a task that is thrown to you that you guys work with.
Well, an example would be like, if someone was booked like a gig last minute, and they're like, hey, we got to promote this. How are we going to do this? Well, how are we going to do it online? How are we going to do it locally print? Is there national attention we want to bring to this? Are there celebrities involved? Is there anything we need to know about, said event or venue, or, people attending, or who the crowd is? What's the audience? What's the vibe? And, you can get thrown that stuff very last minute. So
Sure.
you prep for that kind of stuff. Media wise, you'll have like someone go, hey, I'm on a deadline. I want to interview this client of yours. Where are they? And they might be locked up in a studio. They might be wherever, and you've got to try and get a hold. And everyone, clients, everything they do is important. So when you bring them something, it has to be important, and you have to fit in getting whatever is needed accomplished.
Interesting. So then you guys are dealing with larger situations where they're needing a national coverage, even down to, and I don't want to call it like neighborhood things, but I mean really smaller scale things also.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you have local, you have domestic, you have international, but everything's important because at the end of the day, if you hit one person and affect them and cause them to want to discuss whomever or whatever you're working with, and they go to people, the word of mouth is always the most powerful.
Sure. Yeah, that it would be, and then you must have a Rolodex of different resources that you can contact. So when you have that situation where someone says, "Hey, I'm going to be doing this here," who can we reach out to? I would guess you must have a massive Rolodex.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the one thing you're always doing, or what you have in mind, is when someone comes to you with a need, is who do I have that can help me? Who can help me right away? What, what is that person or that contact or that place that I need to reach as soon as possible to get an immediate response? Because, hey, I left a message isn't going to cut it. You know what I mean? Oh, I sent an email, we need a response. So, it's really important when you're in this role of publicity, public relations, media relations, that you can get what you need as fast as possible, as efficient as possible, from the best sources possible.
So this is an area that's going to parallel some of the struggles that mobile DJs, wedding DJs will have. We send him an email. We need a response. How are you escalating that to get that response in a timely enough fashion?
Well, I mean, sometimes you got to call people twice. Sometimes you have to, sometimes you have to embarrass people. Sometimes you go publicly on their Twitter. Hey, where are you? Sometimes maybe they have a Facebook page that's public, or you're friends with them on Facebook. Hey, where are you? So there are ways, especially now more than ever, where you can, and you do this, think about it, you do this with an airline. An airline upsets you and you have a bad experience. What's the first thing you're going to do? Well, you'll probably go to Twitter.
Yes.
And you'll be like, wow, I had an incredibly terrible experience. And I'll be honest, there's been airlines that have responded and given me miles, because, they wanted to keep me happy. They saw that I was a frequent flyer of sort.
Mm-hmm.
And that's across the board in all business, because now everything we deal with has a public domain per se. And so if you're not on top of it, someone's going to out you publicly.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, is that part of your role also at times? Is when someone has been outed publicly in a negative way? I mean, do you have to deal with that also as a publicist?
Oh, that's the fire station aspect of this gig, which is, the truck got called and you got to go put out a fire. So absolutely, you deal with that, obviously more than less as time has gone on, because people are quick to jump online and state an opinion, or start, quote unquote, start a fire publicly to raise the level of alertness to whatever the issue is.
And then your job is to take that and
Yeah,
spin
you're
it
the my
or
job's to clean up the mess, and some messes are easier to clean up than others, So
oh.
it's just that really depends on the situation, and I've definitely been thrown plenty of situations in that regard.
Interesting, interesting. Let's kind of dive into a little bit now. The majority of our viewers are going to be that kind of that small business owner, the that are out there doing mobile entertainment and such. Some are going to be doing some a little bit of national things here and there, but most of them are just kind of in their region, and they're trying to get their name out there a little bit more. Now, this something that a publicist would be able to help them in their immediate market?
It'd be yes and no
Okay.
because obviously a publicist can be expensive, and it's got to be an expense that's worthwhile based on whatever budget you have. But that being said, a publicist can help with your brand. A publicist can help with your marketing, help with your social media, and sort of help guide you. So it might not be someone you have full time or someone you might hire on a consulting basis, but there are plenty of media locally wherever you are that you can reach out to and pitch, and you're going to work with a publicist on angles and stories and ideas, and you'd probably have media come out to watch you and see what you do. So I don't think necessarily you're going to spend, you're not putting all your eggs in a basket in this, as far as hiring someone in my position, but consulting a publicist and looking for help, and you might have ideas, and you might have other projects that you want help with that might be national, that you might consider. So I think in that respect, it doesn't hurt if you have something that you're trying to go out in mass out wide with. You're going to want to consult someone with that experience.
You mentioned, of course, getting a project where you're going to doing something bigger than typical, and I know that a lot of DJs have created something where they're doing something. Maybe one has created a fundraising event for the Cancer Society. I mean, he created it himself. And part of the reason he was creating this, not only does he have a passion because of family with cancer, but he also wanted to be able to give back to the community, and he wanted to get his name out there. In a situation like that, if he were going to be approaching a lot of these different entities compared to if you were approaching a TV station, who's going to have more success in that arena?
Well, I mean, I think it's a classic example of, like, you could probably do your own plumbing, right? But you also want to hire a plumber. So, I mean, who's a professional? Because you might not have 100% confidence in doing so. In the same way, you can call a TV state, you can call the blog, so on and so forth. But you might want to seek someone who does it on a daily basis, who has relationships with people, who knows, the right time and the right, in the right manner to pitch, what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So that being said, um, you want help. You're putting yourself out there, and certainly it comes off, there's a professional nature of having a publicist in your corner versus doing it by yourself. But I mean, you know that's what that can also be the case where you consult with someone in my position, and I'll be the first to tell you whether you need someone in my position or you don't. I think it's really important to be very open, or at least I am, with the clients that I work with.
Yeah, and I can imagine so, because first off, if they don't need your full gamut of what you do, and trying to force the issue is not going to be good for either of you.
No, exactly. So you want to handle it carefully, and I think there has to be thought, and there has to be design into what it is you're trying to accomplish.
So you've been doing this for a number of years and such, and the on the entertainment side, some of the clients and such, you've had some bigger clients, I'm sure, that have taken a lot of hand holding. How much of, I mean, is that a big part of your job, where you're working with people who really just they don't know what they're doing, and you're having to take them from point A to point B, or is it that they have a pretty good idea and you're just kind of filling in the gaps?
By the time I am working with someone, they have a certain amount of experience. I've definitely had a wide variety of clients. I've certainly, there are clients that are very well known, and there's a ton of clients I've had over 18, 19 years that you would have never heard of, right? So I've had my hand holding, I've had my guiding, I've also had those that I don't need to do that with. You really, when I take on a client, it's really important to get an understanding as soon as possible as to how media savvy they are.
Sure.
So if I have to do the hand holding, I'll do it. If I don't, then we can focus our attention and our energy in other ways. But
Sure.
there is absolutely an amount of that because I think a lot of people when they think of the media, and certainly you read it every day and whatnot, there's a constant, you have a constant thing going where you have you have to know you have fear, right?
Hmm.
Let's just take the fear aspect of when I'm speaking to someone publicly, like you and I are speaking.
Yeah.
Do I know what I'm talking about? Am I confident in what I have to say? Do I start to overthink this and think about, this is going to reach 10, 20,000, how many ever
Yep.
people, and then start to freak out. So experience is incredibly important. And you want to, when I have a client who's, let's say fresh and new, I want to get them either media trained or I do the training myself to where they feel comfortable having a conversation because I think, you've done a million interviews. It's all about making this a conversation.
Very much
That's
so.
when it gets the most interesting. When you and I are going back and forth and there's an interesting discussion versus I might get frigid or I might just rant and you have to cut me off because
Exactly.
I'm not giving you any information.
Yeah, and that's happened once on a show, one time. Just one time. Oh, so let's talk about if you don't mind sharing a couple of the there's got to be a couple of stories out there of some of your favorite situations that where you've worked with the client and things have just clicked and you've been able to really help them achieve their goals.
One of the biggest projects I had in my career on my own, label stuff was different, but I worked with Sasha Grey when she was cast in Steven Soderbergh's The Girlfriend Experience. So you had an adult film star who was relatively well known, and she gets cast in a mainstream motion picture that was, making its way through sort of the film. It was going to be a film festival thing, and it was directed by one of the biggest, directors of all time, in Steven Soderbergh. And so it was just an incredible project. Once the movie was shot and we started the marketing publicity, it was about a year. We did this over well over a year, and she went to Tribeca. She went abroad. We did film festivals all over this country, and then you had, online and theatrical release, and then DVD release. So, and then that led her into playing herself in the series Entourage. So here was just a young woman, very smart, very knowledgeable, very confident, who was thrust into a place she had never been,
Sure.
which was this massive mainstream spotlight. And I always say when it came to that campaign, it wasn't like, oh, we did this, this, and this. It's what we didn't do. And the fact is, we did every major media outlet possible over a year period. She did these gorgeous high-end fashion layouts, all these interviews, press junkets, and it was pretty incredible. Just she took it. She was so good.
Hmm.
She was so professional, and it didn't. You can burn out really fast doing press junkets. You hear about celebrities all the time, and you hear when a celebrity slips, right?
Right. Yes.
We've seen all these viral videos when a celebrity makes a mistake in a junket nowadays, and it goes to hell, so to
Hmm.
speak. She was totally professional. It was incredible. So that was a lot of fun. I got to work with Gene Simmons on a book project of all things, and he did a 3-day media tour in New York, and we did media in LA, and we did book signings, and you know his work ethic because I always Gene's Israeli, as you know,
Hmm.
so
Yep.
his work ethic and his mindset is incredible. He is of that soldier mentality, and people will say what they will about him, and I've heard it all. Trust me, but you could never question the man's work ethic and his attention to detail.
Hmm.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, I don't even know how many interviews I had him do. He did them all. He did them 24/7. I had to wake up at 3 a.m. one morning just to, he was in New York doing stuff, so I had to be up and ready just to make sure everything went right.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
and that was another real pretty incredible experience as far as that goes. And then I have things like the AVN Expo in Las Vegas, which I've handled, and we have over 1,000 media people every year, and it's just 24/7. Where it's a constant barrage of you know taking people's requests, helping people out, connecting people. I've done punk rock bowling a few times. I've done expos in Miami. I just helped work at an expo in Colombia, down in South America. So I've been very fortunate in the wide variety of events and people that I've worked with.
Interesting. Yeah, quite a variety of different talent that you've worked with and experiences. Very nice.
Thank you.
So let's spend a few more minutes. We've got just a few more minutes, gang. We're going to cut this little short. Brian's got some things he needs to attend to this evening. Let's talk social media just for a little bit. That, of course, is one of the biggest areas out there right now. And what I'd like to do is kind of have us go through the different, the main ones: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And I don't know if Pinterest fits into your category or not, but give me an idea from a publicist side, your opinion of those of the different social media main outlets out there.
Well, the biggest one right now, in my opinion, and this is up for debate, obviously, would be Instagram. I think the growth rate of that specific app, the way it's taken different aspects, we're so visual, and it's such a visual app, and then there's the video element. I think what's very fascinating, and you'll notice the growth in it, and of course people forget it was bought for what, $4 billion by Facebook, and now could probably be priced at X amount of times worth what was originally paid. You're constantly seeing paid sponsors on there. If you go through your feed, every third is about a paid sponsorship. So
yes,
there's a lot of money going into Instagram from anybody to increase their awareness and increase their viewership. I think people would obviously put Twitter on a large scale, and obviously Twitter gets very political and whatnot. I think Instagram gets less so because it's more about experience and the visual aspect of one's life. Facebook is massive. Facebook's a little more personal, a little more restrictive, but still is important. Pinterest is definitely important, and it'll be interesting as they have an IPO coming up, what their valuation is and
yes,
in response to that. Snapchat exists, but obviously is struggling. And then, I could look at my phone and probably find 6, 7 other apps. I think the one that's interesting that I will bring up is this Telegram messaging service, because it seems like now that WhatsApp is under the Facebook umbrella, people are looking for a more private type of way to communicate, and it seems like Telegram is certainly growing in that way. So, I mean, my point is this, and I've learned this with a lot of different clients: they're all important, but they're not. But some are more important, dependent on what traction and reaction you get from them. Someone might be like, Twitter is my business. I get all my leads from Twitter. It's huge. And another person will say, nothing happens for me on Twitter.
Yep.
Instagram's my thing, blah, blah, blah. So it's really about, first off, it's all important, right? There's no question about it. There's a Pandora's box aspect to social media, but I'm a big fan. It's gotten me a lot of things. It's got, I literally I've been to places around the world because of social media.
Sure.
So I'm a very much of the importance, but there's a balance to it. You can get very much sucked in, and it can drag you down if you allow it. That goes for anything in life. But I think it's really important that when you involve social media in your business, in your career, go with what works. What works for you might not work for others, and you might not, if you're dragging your feet, or if you're hitting a wall with said social media outlet, then stop and don't focus the attention on the one that's working for you.
When you guys are having clients come in, and if you have let's say Gene Simmons is writing a book, and Gene's writing it, and he's got a certain crowd or an audience that's going to find that book appealing. Then if you have let's go somebody much younger. If you have a Justin Bieber type, youngster like that's coming in, and or an Ariana Grande type person, they're going to have a different audience. When you look at these, are you looking at and saying, okay, I know that we should do some things more left with you and more right with you, because they're aiming at two different audiences? Or how do you guys really decide what's the best fit that way?
Absolutely. I think it's really important that it's tailored to whomever you are, whomever you work with, wherever your audience is. It's definitely something that I think a lot of people sort of push off on social media, right? They just, they laugh at it, or they don't take it worth the grain of salt that it deserves to be taken at, because we live in a society where uh, we want to take social media down, right? You want to look at the negative.
Yeah.
But the fact is, nothing, outside of the internet, the socio impact of social media, of connecting to one another, is something we've never experienced. So it's really important to understand. You listen, watch the Fire Festival documentaries. You'll see what social media did.
Yeah,
You
that was
know, I mean, that's the most primal case where you literally, quote unquote, had influencer. I don't need to go through it.
actually, I want to talk about that, but let's wrap up that thought.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all about the client. It's all about what works best for them, and how much they want to be involved. Because you have to be involved with it too. You can't just sit back.
No, for sure. I would imagine so, because you've got to be out there and having your finger basically on the pulse of what's going on to know
Absolutely.
when you've got to switch, when you've got to move, and when you've got to maybe expand an area because it's all of a sudden taken off on you.
Absolutely.
Just a couple of minutes left. You mentioned the fire. I was wondering if we could go here or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I wanted to go, the question I had for you is, how much of what they did with the Fire Festival did you guys look at and say that was absolutely brilliant on how they did some aspects of it? Because I looked at some of it and I thought that some of their marketing and promotion to get the excitement built, there was some things they did that was fabulous. And I don't know if I was looking at it as a novice or a naive person. I'd like to get your opinion on that side of it.
I mean, listen, it's funny to have watched the documentary. And I've only watched the Netflix one. I haven't watched the Hulu one. To watch, when you watch a documentary and then you're like, oh wow, that was a year ago. You've watched documentaries in your life, and you watch documentaries from the early 1900s. You weren't there, but then you watch documentaries of like something that happened 3 years ago, and you remember where you were. So when the fire thing was happening, I was in my office, I was working, I had clients, and from afar I was like, okay. And I had actually worked with Blink 182, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. That was the only band where I'm like, okay, they're managed by smart people. They're smart people themselves. Okay, maybe this is legit. The second they tweeted that they were no longer involved, I knew it was done. That was the one. That was the one, because that band doesn't pull out of contractual agreements ever. They are strictly professional. They are people I've dealt with. They are amazing guys. And you're like, wait a second, this isn't them. This is Fire Festival.
Sure.
And that was the moment for me. And then obviously what happened. So yeah, you saw it going down. You saw the influencing, and yeah, to an extent, it was absolutely brilliant. But the psychopathic nature, and the greed, and just the promises, were insane. And I had an experience like that where a large property, if you remember in Las Vegas back in the early 2000s when real estate was hot, you had a lot of condos being sold, right? They're going to build these buildings, and you put a deposit. You remember, and I was involved in that. And what happened with fire brought me back to that, because sure enough, one of the, out of 25 properties, I believe 24 failed and one was created. So, but I remember one of them that failed that was literally just, you were painted this picture of like, oh my gosh, this is utopian. This is unbelievable. Well, sure enough, it was unbelievable. And that's what Fire Festival absolutely felt like, is that it was unbelievable. And I wasn't familiar with the Fire app. I just had heard about the festival first. So, greed is a fascinating thing. And I think greed and power, remember, my job is to make brands and products and people famous for a living, right? So that's a perception versus reality. You might see something and be like, oh my gosh, I've seen that everywhere. And I might look at the same thing and go, I didn't see anything. So there's perception versus reality, and the perception of what they were creating versus the reality of what what was going on, was obviously insane.
That
And
it
so I
was.
think, you always think we learn from these things because we see them happen every few years. But when you're in it, when you're those people, when there's a leader, when someone's,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but when someone's feeding you the Kool-Aid, sometimes you drink it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to be incredibly careful. And it's very fascinating the power that people can have over one another. And this was a prime
Right.
example of that.
A very good example of that. Yeah. Brian, you need to be hitting road here. Brian, if people would like to check out find out more information about what you are and what you do, and get into contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
My website is bsgpr.com, and that's B as in boy, S as in Sam, G as in great, P as in Paul, R as in Robert, BSG Public Relations. I'm at Twitter at BSGPR, also on Instagram at BSGPR. I try and keep that stuff pretty linear. I find that the best way to do it.
Yep, that it does. That I know exactly what you mean with that. The links for the website and such are down below in the description below, so you guys can go check that out. Pop out there, check out Brian, and if you have any questions or anything, his contact information for reaching out is on the website. So, Brian, I want to thank you for kind of walking us through some things tonight. This is kind of a fun little session.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.
We'll be back, gang, in about a half an hour with our Shaney's Got 5 on it tonight. We'll catch you then. Bye-bye.